So as you know, we are transmitting this live here today. So I want to welcome those who are in the room and those who are joining us by live transmission on the YouTube channel. Welcome to the 2025 CPR International Mediation Competition. It's our pleasure to have this competition again. We've been bringing this since 2017. And I want to introduce my co-chair for the event, Diego Falek.
Hello.
So my name is Kanar Nihikian. I'm with the CPR Institute in New York City, and it's our pleasure to present this competition. We had 18 teams who competed live here in this live session of the event, and we are now at the final round stage. So we have a tremendous gratitude that I want to acknowledge, and we will get into that during the award ceremony, but just a very quick thank you to the teams who came here, to the judges who gave their time, to the room supervisors who kept everything on time and running smoothly, to my fantastic organizing committee, who I'm going to name by name later, but we really need to get this round started. So we're going to share with you now the teams who are competing in this live event, and we're going to get the mediation session started, okay? So the final round mediator from Tashkent University is Rozihan Kuchkarova. I'd like to call her up, please, to the stage. Yes, please. Playing the role of Sunfire is Jindal Global Law School. Jindal, please. And playing the role of Moon is Cardozo Law School. Okay, and now Diego will introduce the final round judges for today.
I'd like to thank our judges for the final, Roberto Custer, Liana Goldberg-Valdetaro, Anna Sambold, Rafael Alves, and James Mangier. Thank you very much.
So now we'll ask the room supervisors to please get us started with the official program.
Hi everyone, again, welcome to the final round. I'll start saying that I'm working here as your room supervisor with Anna, with Lucas, and Anna? Just a few informations first. I know you already know, but it's gonna be very quickly. Electronic devices are not allowed during the session. Please maintain silence as well. And you can use phone only for timekeeping. And I think that's it. Thank you for being here today. Wish you very good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, good afternoon, dear parties, esteemed representatives of Sunfire and Moon. Thank you for coming here. I'm very glad to see you all again. And I am Tina Swift, your appointed mediator for today's session. Please call me Tina. I know that we are all familiar with each other, but according to mediation protocol, I need to confirm your authority. So please tell me your names, positions, and let me know how can I refer to you. So please.
For the sixth time, my name is P. Mitchell, but feel free to call me Mitch or Maverick, whatever is convenient to you, and I have full authority to settle today.
Thank you.
Perfect.
Hi everyone, good afternoon. I'm the counsel to P. Mitchell. My name is Dr. Bradshaw. I think we're comfortably charged to the point that we go by first name basis. So please just call me Brad. And I have the full, I'm here only in advisory capacity to my client here.
Good afternoon. My name is T. Kazansky, and I am the former CEO of Moon Airlines and the current CFO of Sunfire Airlines, and I have the full authority to settle. You can call me Mr. Kazansky or T if you'd like to feel more comfortable doing so.
Hello, my name is Dr. Neven. I'm here in a representative capacity as Mr. Kazansky's counsel. Feel free to call me Dr. Neven, and my client has full authority to settle today.
So thank you everyone for introducing yourself. Welcome to the mediation session. So we've come a long way together through several successful sessions that have demonstrated your commitment, resilience, and your willingness to find a common ground. And over these sessions, you were able to reach agreement on several aspects of our dispute. So you were able to cover the financial reimbursement, intellectual property and brand assets allocation, as well as the allocation of physical assets, also the debt issues, and the last one is you covered all the issues together. So before we start, I know that you're all familiar with the mediation procedure, but this is my duty to remind you the basic principles of mediation in order to make sure that you are keeping them in your mind. So first of all, this is fully voluntary process. You came here by your own will, and I hope that you can confirm it. And secondly, this process is fully confidential, so everything discussed in this mediation process stays here, and even I will get rid of my notes after the end of the session. And third one, the principle of equality. We see both parties equal in this process. You have equal rights in asking questions, making offers, asking for a private session, and so on. And the last but not least, is the impartiality principle. This is directly connected to the mediator, so you can use me as a neutral third party. I'm not a judge, I'm not a lawyer, and I don't have any prejudice to you in this session, to any of the parties. And to make this process very comfortable for you, I propose to set some rules. So first of all, we do respect each other, we do not interrupt each other, and we do not use electronic devices except for timekeeping purposes or the calculation. So if you are ready to apply these rules, please confirm and let me know if you want to add something else.
Yes, we are.
Okay, great. So we can start our mediation procedure, and in order to reach the constructive dialogue, we have the procedural structure. We will have the introduction part with your opening statements, and we will set the agenda based on them. Then we'll move to discussion part where you can ask questions, make offers, generate ideas together, and during this part you can also ask for a caucus. This is a private session between the party and mediator, and also for a break, which is only between client and counsel. And I also want to outline that we are coming from different cultural backgrounds, and we're not all native English speakers. So if there's any misunderstandings, please don't hesitate to clarify. And for the end, let me just describe our mediation sessions in the language of airlines industry that you're all experts in. We had a long-distance flight together on the mediation airplane. We went through the turbulences, we went through the smooth charts, even managed adverse weather conditions. As a pilot of your airplane, I already see a landing tower. So let me say this. Cabin crew, be prepared. We are landing. So let's start with your opening statements, and we will start with the Sunfire if Moon Airways doesn't mind here. Okay, so
Thank
please.
you very much. I must say, seeing that we are in the beautiful city of Sao Paulo, I must start by saying bom tarde, or good afternoon. Now, first things first, to thank the most influential person on this table, Tina, I must say, thank you so much for the effort that you put in over the last 5 sessions. I do realize that you are getting paid for these sessions, but we truly appreciate your guidance throughout this time. And if it wasn't for your presence here, we wouldn't have come to the resolution with regards to the dissolution. And with that said, I would love to continue to spend more and more time with you. But of course, my pockets aren't so deep. But however, I'd be more than willing to offer you to join us on our hot yoga sessions going forward. Now, with that said, I must say, thank you, Iceman. We've had a lot of discussions over the past few days with regards to dissolution. These were very heated topics, and as I mentioned before, what was important here was not to have reach a settlement per se, but to have an open and honest channel of communication. And I feel like over these last 5 sessions, we've done exactly that. And now going forward, the possibilities are endless. Now, before I get into my perspective and how things are going to go, I just want to say that, resonating with what Tina said, there are some cultural differences at this table. Now, obviously, English is not our first language. So perhaps if something that we say is unclear or if we speak too fast, feel free to ask us to repeat ourselves. Now, getting into my perspective. Before takeoff, or before this mediation started, there were a lot of tensions and a lot of struggles that we faced. Now, this tension and this pressure came from numerous places. Shareholders, family members, customers, loyal employees, so on and so forth. But when I was speaking to my board, they were very concerned about this entire process of mediation and whether we'd be able to reach a settlement here. I assured them that the turbulence is behind us and it's smooth landings ahead, and that's exactly what had happened. With regards to the demerger, we came to an agreement regarding everything that we wanted to talk about: financial restitution, the dissolution of IPs, and dissolution of assets. We came to an agreement where both parties were going to benefit greatly from this. But I feel like there's new horizons, or broadened horizons going forward. And those horizons are different to the negotiations we had previously. Previously, we were arguing to become individuals, perhaps go forward that way. But this, we negotiate together. How we're going to go forward together as a team. Now, of course, there's no denying that we had tried this previously and this had not worked. But I feel like it was a great idea with the wrong execution. Now, going forward, what we want to do is make sure that this is executed in the perfect way. Now, I want to synchronize and synergize with you and make sure that we're able to capture this market that we're talking about. Now, this market that I'm talking about is expansive. It's something that neither of our parties have tried conquering before, the middle class market. Now, by the middle class market, I mean the people who have the money but don't want to spend it on luxury services, but at the same time, don't want to go on budget airlines. Now, we have the chance here to use our expertise with cost effectiveness and with luxury, and to bring them together and truly make waves in this market. Now, when we make these waves, possibilities are endless. We could soar so high that we even touch the moon, the sun, and beyond that, the stars. Now, with that said, I'd like to pass it on to my counsel, Mr. Bradshaw, to perhaps continue.
Thank you so much for that, Mitchell. I know these sessions have been hard for you, but I'm so glad with the progress we made, and hopefully this might be our last session here today. I would like to begin by firstly thanking you, Tina. The amount of help you've given all of us, not just us, Mitchell and me, but as well Kazansky and Dr. Nevin. The amount of effort you put in is the only reason we've made the progress that we have till now. I would also like to acknowledge the analogy that you had given us about the plane and the tower. We also see the tower coming closely, and we would love to make a smooth landing. I would like to thank you, Kazansky, as well as you, Dr. Nevin. I think this is becoming quite a day-to-day session, and I think even after the session do conclude, we should see each other more often, and perhaps meet over some golf or some coffee as well. I would also like to emulate what I mentioned in my introduction, that I'm here only in an advisory capacity. I'm here to assist my client. And I think this can be perfectly seen in a way that how an autopilot sort of steers and guides a pilot in a plane. And you can see me playing that exact role. I understand that this is a client-driven process, and I would hope that they would take a charge in these sessions. I would also like to talk about what's led us to this moment. A lot of progress has been made, a lot of agreements have been made, and all these agreements are something that we mutually benefit from. And now we see this new horizon. This new horizon is not something that neither of us thought we would come into by the end of the session, but I'm so glad we're here now. And to further the client's interest, and as well as try to understand your perspectives, I would like to propose certain discussion points so that we could head towards a steer towards these new horizons. So firstly, we'd like to talk about the structure of the joint venture. Yeah. Following this, we'd also like to talk about the governance. I'd also like to point out that these discussion points are not very rigid, but are fluid in nature. So we can always go back and forth between them. And I would also like to end my introduction with a sort of analogy. A lot of people say mediation is a marathon and not a sprint, but we see it as a hurdle race, where each of the hurdles are the discussion points we have here today, and as we tackle them, we get closer to the finish line. And I hope that by the end of the session, we don't get a bigger slice of the pie, nor do you, but we make the pie bigger for both of us. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mitchell and Mr. Bradshaw. And let me just quickly summarize what's been said here. So I see that there is a new horizon opening here, and the points that you want to discuss, first of all, your interest is to cover the middle class market, and the points to discuss are structure of the joint venture and the governance. Is it correct?
Perfect.
Thank you, and thank you for giving such a great analogies here. So now we're leaving the floor to Moon Airways. So, Mr. Kazansky.
Great. Thank you, Tina, for sitting with us for already 6 mediation sessions in 3 days. I know it's no small feat, and I want to thank you, Mr. Mitchell, and your counsel, Mr. Bradshaw, for being able to sit here and talk through these issues with good faith and really with the desire to make a deal today. I think we've actually made some really great progress, and I think the mediator has summarized that very effectively, so I would like to save the rest of that time for conversation in terms of this exciting joint venture that is currently on the table. I think it's safe to say that we've weathered most of the storm. We've agreed to plenty, and it looks like we can agree to hopefully one more thing. You know what's interesting is that we made some deals today, but we did something else. I think we learned a lot about what we did correctly and what we could have done better. And I think that specifically is going to guide us into this joint venture. Now, Mr. Mitchell, you mentioned that it was a great idea, but the wrong execution. And I completely want to echo that and make sure that all the discussion that happens here today will reflect all the conversations we've had earlier and keep that in mind so that we can integrate both of those things most effectively. I'm sure you understand the importance of low cost and maintenance, the way that we've really made sure to emphasize it. And likewise, we understand the important interest that you've put forward about brand identity. We understand that those two interests are the ones that are going to be guiding this entire conversation. And I think laying out those shared interests is going to really help us make some progress. And you know what's interesting is that we really never get a chance to really get a do-over in life. Usually things happen and we kind of have to accept the consequences. But in this case, we can really make a change. We can make sure that even though this dissolution, the M&A, the merger did not go well, and unfortunately we had to go our separate ways, we can still meet up for golf and discuss the joint venture business structure. At the top of mind, I ask you that you keep in mind all of our ideas and that you acknowledge all of our primary interests as well. In regards to our primary interests with this specific joint venture, I think it is important to remember that the middle class and the individuals who are we most marketing are extremely sensitive to price, and that is something that we want to emphasize throughout this entire conversation. Additionally, we're interested in making sure that cost efficiency is at top of mind. We address those market needs, and a clear ownership and allocation structure is provided. Thank you so much for all your time, Tina and gentlemen, for everything that we've discussed and hopefully have to discuss in the future.
Thank you, Mr. Kazansky, for highlighting and echoing the sentiments of both Tina and Mr. Mitchell in terms of what you both did correctly and what you can do better moving forward. Dr. Bradshaw, as you stated, I'm also here in a purely advisory capacity to further my client's interests to the best of my abilities and to search for equitable solutions here that make sense for everyone today moving forward. To address the agenda that was previously laid out, my understanding is that it was first the structure of the joint venture and secondly governance. Just to clarify, please let me know if this aligns. My client was looking to discuss allocation of the ownership, and that could map onto the structure of the joint venture, and in terms of governance, looking to discuss some oversight mechanisms specifically relating to spending decisions and brand protection. And lastly, to echo the sentiment that we are from different cultures, My client and I also tend to speak quickly sometimes, so please feel free to ask us to slow down or rephrase anything at any point.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kazansky, Dr. Niven. And I really love how Mr. Kazansky highlighted the shared interest of both of you, which is brand identity and law cost maintenance. And you also mentioned your interest about the price, cost efficiency, and clear structure. And also, Dr. Niven suggested several points to agenda, which are allocation of ownership and oversight mechanisms. Is it correct? And does it?
Yeah, thank you, Tina, for laying out both the points so perfectly. And I kind of think some overlaps between the discussion points we mentioned. Perhaps if we could lay it out on the board so that we get a clear understanding and then move from there.
Yes, of course. We will set the agenda right now.
Yeah.
Okay, and before setting the agenda, I would like to point something out. I think that I saw that there is a new thing on the table, which is joint venture. And like we can see the sun during the day, we can see moon during the night. But do you know what's the most beautiful time of the day? This is dusk and down, when we have a moon and sun at the same sky. And this is a very great that you came up with that idea, and with such positive note, I will set up the agenda for you.
Thank you, Tina.
Thank you.
We will use two boards, first for agenda, so we will keep the track, and also for the offers. Okay? So is it comfortable for you to see here, or should I move the whiteboard? Okay.
It is comfortable.
Okay, so we're setting the agenda right now, and what I've heard from Moon is that you want to discuss the, just a second, the structure of the joint venture and the governance, and from Moon's side, the allocation of ownership and oversight mechanisms. And how can we just clearly combine that in the one agenda?
If I may, I think both the agendas proposed by both teams are perhaps the same thing, just phrased differently.
Okay.
So perhaps you could just label the first one as ownership and structure, and the second one as governance.
That's brilliant. So first of all is ownership and structure. And secondly, we have the governance issue. Also, a quick reminder that we are pretty flexible, so you can sometimes jump in different points, okay? So we're all set with the agenda, and now we move to the most interesting part of our mediation session, which is the discussion part. And here I would like to leave the option for you who wants to start the discussion session.
If I may.
You may.
Okay.
All right, so just to get started with, I'd like to have a clear understanding of what exactly you would be bringing to the table with regards to the Sun Moon third business that we'd be willing to start. So this, I believe, if we have a clear understanding of what exactly you're bringing to the table, and perhaps if we could explain what we bring to the table, it would be much easier to perhaps decide an ownership structure and how that breakdown would look like.
Mr. Mitchell, I appreciate you asking that question because it is an important one. To know what each side brings to the table is something that really helps us to make an offer or a conversation here today. Primarily, and I think you understand this throughout the last 6 sessions, cost efficiency is our wheelhouse. Moon has built its brand over the last 10 plus years on making sure, and quite honestly, the reason that I think when me and you met, that you chose me to become the CFO of Sunfire Airlines. I know that you believed that my skills at cutting costs and making a brand efficient while also maintaining its quality is something that I certainly bring to the table. And I'd like to acknowledge that I'm very aware of what you bring to the table. I think your brand is 0 to none. The luxury standard is probably the best in the market, and I've seen that after 6 years of working. I guess I have a question in response, if I may. Particularly, do you have an idea of the kind of ownership structure that you believe would really prevent a previous governance issue? The reason I'm asking is because we seem to have had a falling out once, and I think the goal is to make sure that doesn't happen again.
Straight to the numbers, exactly how we wanted to go. So first of all, I must say, the reason I did choose you and the reason we want to choose you again for the second part of Sun Moon is exactly what you stated, the cost effectiveness. And of course, you are bringing a lot to the table, and what we are bringing to the table is our second to none luxury services. So with regards to percentage, I'd love to slap it down on the table and then go from there. What we'll be thinking about is perhaps continuing a similar structure to what we had before. So we'd be proposing a 60-40 split, which would mean 60% remain with the Sunfire shareholders and 40% with the Moon shareholders. And I think Bradshaw will further elaborate on that.
Thank you so much for that, Mitchell. So as my client is trying to say, brand identity plays a huge role in how we move forward. So when we talk about a joint venture, we're combining luxury as well as cost efficiency. And the luxury, as you mentioned, our company is 0 to none. So we'll be looking to talk about the percentages, and we'd like to hear your opinion on the same. So please.
Certainly, and my client is happy to discuss percentages of this ownership. But just as a clarifying question from the outset to scale back a little bit, is this joint venture the sole pursuit that Sunfire sees in its future, or is Sunfire also planning on reinstating Sunfire as it was in addition to this joint venture?
We would, of course, be, as I mentioned earlier, this would be a third brand perhaps. So there would be 3 brands in place, Sunfire as it was before, Moon as it's planning to continue, and then the third brand would be Sun Moon. And just a follow-up with that, we didn't hear your thoughts on what the percentage put on the table was, so we'd love to hear that.
Yes, I think I can take that. I guess I just want to push back a little bit on that 60-40 structure. And, you know, honestly, it's a bit because of the experience that has existed or has manifested itself while we were a merged entity. The 60-40 structure really creates a bit of, it's disproportionate in terms of the value that each side brings. And I think at the time when Moon was joining Sunfire, it was a smaller brand, so it's really not necessarily that 40% was reflective of the size of the company. But right now, this 40% is, it's more so reflecting the fact that Moon perhaps does not have enough value, but the point is that we're trying to make is that we bring equal value to the table. I think we're willing to do a lot in addition to that, beyond just that, you know, providing cost cutting. And I think I'd like to push back in terms of, I think we should, Moon should be entitled to 55% of the ownership structure. And I'll give you some background. We are also willing to make sure that all the IP assets that we have negotiated previously are going to be included into that joint venture. And I'm sure you can speak on that. I know there's a lot of ownership of IP that you have behind the door with Sunfire, and if you're willing to share that, that'd be great. But I think that's a big boost in terms of the Aerostream booking system among the other IP that we've discussed.
And just to clarify a little bit, the 60-40 split, this was reflective of that surviving corporation that was Sunfire and Moon. And we've just discussed in the past 5 mediation sessions how this structure did not work. There was governance vacuums left. Therefore, a 60-40 split, again, in this new joint venture, this would be backwards looking. This would not be reflective of the capabilities, and this would be falling into the same traps that led us astray before. So that where my client is coming from in proposing a 55% share of this company to Moon is to really reflect that this middle target customer base that we are seeking to, one of the first and foremost priorities that my client will elaborate on is this cost efficiency. And it's integrating Sunfire's luxury programs into this cost efficiency, which is Mr. Kazansky's expertise. So that is where he's coming from in seeking the 55% share.
Just before I leave the floor to you, let me just quickly summarize the first part of the discussion. So what we heard from both of you is that there will be a joint venture, which is the separate company from Sunfire and Moon. This will be a Sun Moon, the third company. So, and also Sunfire here proposing 60 to 40% split in the ownership, and Moon proposing the 55% and I guess to 45% split. Is it correct, Mr. Kazansky?
I think we are proposing that it be mostly Moon in terms of 55% in Moon ownership and 45% in terms of Sunfire ownership.
Okay. So do you want me to indicate on the whiteboard, or should we proceed with that?
I think at the moment, while we're just juggling offers and discussing really the reasoning for them, it would be better to reserve just some space for.
Okay, so
for a
you will also
conversation.
elaborate on this offer. So that's great. I just wanted to keep the track and that we are on the same page. So please, Mitchell, I'm sorry I interrupted you.
Thank you for that neutral summary of what exactly they said. Now, with regards to what you had said, with regards to disproportionate, that we're no longer disproportionate and that we're at an equal footing. I think with regards to that, obviously, I do realize what Moon is bringing to the table. Obviously, cost efficiency. You are a leader in your field, and then there's no denying that. But I think to bring the luxury aspect to this merged entity that we're trying to create would be much more expensive and much more difficult to find, and which is why we believe that we're valued higher in this discussion. Now, that's not to belittle what your company stands for, and as I said, you are a leader in your field, but we truly believe that the luxury assets that we be bringing to the table is worth a lot more than the cost cutting and the IP, obviously, and I think Bradshaw has more to say about that.
Yeah, thank you for emulating the points so beautifully, and I like to just talk about the same actually. Even if you look at before the merger happened, Sunfire's value was much higher in terms of the assets. It was the amount of assets it was bringing in, the amount of services it was bringing into the merged entity was higher than how much Moon was bringing in, and we see that same value as it goes. We see it as the luxury aspect is a very difficult field to get into, and we see this field having a much higher value than perhaps maybe going into like a cost-cutting kind of measure. So in terms of this, we'd also like to hear your opinion on how we kind of separate these values, because we do understand that we are bringing higher value to the joint venture. So if you could just give your same on this, and I'd like Mitchell elaborate on the same.
Just one more question to add on to that question being, are there any concerns that you face? I noticed some hesitancy when we proposed the 60-40, but are there any concerns that you have with us maintaining a higher share in this entity of Sun Moon?
Thank you for that question. There was a lot there, so I'm going to try to address everything one point at a time. I think really the luxury aspects that you mentioned, I absolutely acknowledge that they are critical, but I want one thing to be at top of mind during these conversations. We're not speaking to a luxury clientele. We're speaking to a clientele that's in the middle market whose priority is not necessarily to have all the pomp and circumstance and the lovely service that Sunfire provides, nor the small budget efficient company that Moon provides, rather a middle service. And so as we provide both of those important parts of the service that we provide, I think it's important to distribute that in terms of ownership. The cuts, again, I want to emphasize, will remain to be a significant amount of work, because the amount of luxury experience that Sunfire brings is going to be the same as it brought in the operation of Sunfire. And you can correct me if I'm wrong, and in fact, I'd like to actually ask you if you have any plans in particular to downgrade some of that luxury in order to maintain costs. But before you get to that, I'd like to hand it off to my attorney, who would just like to make a brief comment.
Certainly. So I realize my client did pose a question, and he is eager to hear your response to that question. However, in response to your previously posed question of whether this 60-40 split would concern Moon, to be blunt, and in the interest of time, yes, this would concern Moon. As I stated before, this was the initial ownership structure that we just paid our mediator for 5 lovely sessions to unpack how this did not work. Therefore, the 60-40 split that you had initially proposed, again, this still will not work. And my client would be interested in hearing your response to the 55%. And on top of that, just another sentiment that, or you know what, let's hear your response, and I will save my sentiment.
Absolutely. So with regards to the 60-40 split, I hear that you do have concerns, but I'd like to make it clear from the get-go. We are not trying to play hardball, and we're not trying to throw around numbers that we believe are unrealistic. But with regards to Moon holding a higher share in this new merged entity of Sun Moon would be unacceptable on our part, because what we're looking for is a division that's equal based off of what we bring to the table, which is why I had asked you that from the very get-go. And we still believe that the luxury services that we bring hold higher value, as we stated earlier. Now, this higher value that we bring to the table, we need to be remunerated for. And now, obviously, you mentioned the previous entity and how it did not work. And I realized that perhaps we could split this ownership, or the shares that we're talking about. Now, 60-40 could purely mean an ownership with regards to profit share. And perhaps this, with regards to governance and other things, I think we could have preferential shares. And although I am more involved in the airline area, I think the legal details can be explained by Dr. Bradshaw here.
Like we mentioned previously, the discussion points are quite fluid, and just touching upon the governance aspect of it, as my client here was trying to mention that according to the main equity sharing, that would be 55% to Sunfire and 45% to Moon. But we'd also like to propose a 50-50 share of the voting rights. So any decision that needs to be made, I think could be made mutually. So not one party has a kind of advantage there, but we like to keep it at a simple majority basis. We'd like to hear your opinion on the same.
I want to thank you for your offer, and I'd like to ask Madam Mediator if you could just summarize that offer and really give some context about some of the impasse that we've.
Yes, for sure. So what's being proposed by Moon is still a 60-40 split in the aspect of ownership. However, for the governance, they are proposing 50-50%, like 50-50 split. So both decisions will be made by the both companies, and this will be equal. So this is your offer, right? Is there anything to add?
Nothing that
Okay.
I guess right now I'm interested in terms of the profit sharing model. Is there a way that you determine that 60% is something that is a fair allocation to Sunfire, or is this generally just going off of what we did before? Because I think, as we've seen, this was not something that worked before.
Absolutely. I think we've been repeating our same point for multiple rounds now, but we truly believe that what we're bringing to this merged entity is worth more than what Moon is bringing to this merged entity. But at the same time, what we want to ensure is that there's no governance vacuum as there was previously, which is why we proposed the idea of governance shares, to ensure that perhaps a stronger foothold with regards to how much shares you hold doesn't affect how you run this company. Because obviously we are like-minded individuals and great businessmen in our own fields, and we'd like to perhaps use both our expertise to capture this market. Anything else?
Yeah, I'd just like to add on to my client's perspective here. So when we talk about the luxury services, not only are we talking about the lounges, but we're also talking about the seats. So when we want to introduce these new touch of luxury services in the new joint venture, we understand that we had to do a lot of downgrading of the current aircrafts that we have, because for us to have these new seats, it would be possible only if Sunfire's aircrafts were downgraded from that top-notch level of luxury to a sort of medium-class level of luxury. So we feel like the assets we're bringing in, and also what you depend on us for, is much higher than sort of other alternatives, which is why we'd be asking for like the same 60-40% ratio.
Thank you for that explanation, Dr. Bradshaw and Mr. Mitchell. I'm just focusing on the pre-merger assets, and what was brought into the initial merger that was just dissolved does not feel like a productive use of time, as time is running down in this session. And to address the governance rights, it doesn't seem as though we've made much progress on the ownership structure. So before fully delving into the ownership structure, the governance rights, to briefly touch on having 50-50 governance rights, that would lead us right back to that vacuum of where we ended up with no control mechanisms for either brand preservation or costs. My client would be interested in discussing some type of advisory committee by having that third party that could be voted on by both you, Mr. Mitchell, and Mr. Kazansky, to be that tiebreaker in decisions. However, hearing an offer other than that 60-40 split would be in my client's best interest at this time to further proceed in the ownership structure.
So with regards to why we proposed this offer of 50-50 with regards to governance structure was not to perhaps encroach on the next agenda, but just to explain our rationale for why we want that share in profit. And perhaps it's something we can discuss later with regards to the committee and everything else. But with regards to our offer, we would be amenable to changing that offer, obviously. But if we are reducing the amount of share that we'd be taking, we'd be wanting to perhaps receive something to offset that difference. Now, we'd love to hear what your offer would be, and perhaps we can move from there.
So I'd like to reiterate that we did make that offer for the 55% and the 45%, and I'd actually like to hear if there's any movement you have on your part, because there's been, I think you reiterated that point at 60-40, and if you could reiterate or perhaps provide another offer that can move a little closer in our direction, and I know you mentioned those governance rights at 50-50, but I just want to make it clear that the profit model doesn't seem to be in alignment with the investment. You mentioned something about the planes, and in terms of the fact that you're going to have to downgrade your planes. I don't think that's necessarily something that we had discussed. And I'm happy to have that discussion, and I'd like to understand a little bit of the rationale as to why you think that instead of investing in new planes or retrofitting Moon's planes, for example, the ones that we can go up in that direction, I'm interested why you decided to stick with the downgrading of the planes, which is in fact a massive expense that, in my capacity, I can determine already is not necessarily the wisest idea.
Certainly. And going off of the point mentioned before about needing to downgrade these planes, my client had previously mentioned that something he would be willing to introduce into this joint venture are the IP that was retained by Moon Airways as a result of the dissolution. So the IP previously discussed was that Skylux cabin design, which would include those cost optimization for the seat ergonomics and the smart overhead compartments. So the IP certainly could be incorporated into these new planes. This certainly wouldn't be Sunfire bearing the cost of the luxury designs that were all previous to this.
I feel like there were a lot of topics just mentioned there, I think 3 or 4 in number. Perhaps the mediator could perhaps bifurcate them so we can address them individually.
Yes, of course. So should I start with the Moon, because your offer was already finalized? So what is Moon proposing is still that split of 55 to 45%. And regarding the downgrade of the assets, in contrary, Moon is suggesting that the assets will be upgraded and other assets, or there will be an investment in the new assets, and they will use their IP of Skylux cabin design to the new planes. So is this correct and fully covers your offer?
That does fully cover our offer,
Okay.
thank you.
So do you want me to indicate them, or it is still too early?
I think it's fine. I can address them
Is
one
it
by
fine?
one.
Okay.
So
Yes, that's okay.
with regards to the split, I think I'll go one by one. With regards to the split, is there a particular reason for why you'd want a majority controlling share?
My client and I did not insinuate that seeking majority control share. However, the 60-40 would present much more than a majority to Sunfire. So just a point of clarification.
About 55-45 is a majority share. Of course, if you're willing to negotiate on that, we can further. We'd be willing to change our share. See, clearly you don't see 55-45 as a clear majority share. We'd be willing to offer that from our side. So we'd be willing to go down to 55 for Sunfire and 45 for Moon. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
I do want to touch on that, but before I do, I think I'd like a little background on the question I asked earlier, and I think it, again, gives me context to make an informed offer. And if it is true that you believe that the only path forward is an investment or a redesign or downgrading of your plane, I'm sure that even cuts into Sunfire's profits, because it's taking out of Sunfire's fleet and giving it directly into the Sun Moon. And so, of course, if that's your position, then we are certainly able to discuss that. But I'd like to understand why before I can continue.
Absolutely. So with regards to this merger, it's obviously something that came up recently over the last couple of hours, maybe a day or so. So with regards to this, we had our analysts discuss how exactly this merger would go forward and how exactly it would work. Now, it's not the ideology that Moon used to go off, and not the luxury ideology that we believe in. So obviously, we have to create some kind of middle ground in order to go forward. And for this middle ground to take place, we have to have the facilities for it. Now, obviously, it can't be the same level of luxury that used to be there, and it can't be the budget airline that Moon seeks to become. So we'd have to perhaps create this solution with a middle ground. And we truly, after our analysts looked into it, we truly believe that the easiest way would be to make some certain changes to the airplanes that Sunfire currently has, rather than to completely strip down and gut the Moon airplanes and then start from scratch. So when you talk about expenses, the expenses are shared on both sides. But we truly believe that downgrading Sunfire would be a more cost-effective solution than gutting Moon and then starting from scratch. 1 second.
So I just like an opportunity to get into the specifics. So the joint venture is basically targeting customers who prefer long-haul domestic flights, as well as international flights of modest durations. We believe that the assets that we own regarding the long-haul flights would serve as the perfect entity that we could actually provide them with, so that these flights can happen with that hint of luxury, but also with the cost efficiency that Kazansky you bring into the table. So we also believe that the other services that we do bring in, the lounges, as well as like the point system and all of those add that amount of hint of luxury that we believe we bring into the table. So we just like to hear your opinion on if you do see the same, or if you see it a different way.
What I'm hearing from you is that it seems like there's this idea that this Sun Moon venture is going to be heavily dependent on a lot of the luxury that Sunfire brings. And again, you mentioned that this is going to be for middle class buyers, and I think this is the primary issue for Moon, and why this was a venture that did not work out initially is because the luxury that Sunfire brings it's excellent and it works and the Sunfire model. Unfortunately, it didn't work out under our 6-year leadership, but I think the broader point that I'm trying to make is that we need to address the middle market consumers. And if your point is that you're going to continue with the lounges and the points and the cabins, it appears to be that it's not necessarily. I would understand why the profit model needs to be greater on Sunfire's side, but my point is that there are cuts that are going to have to be made that are going to address the consumer that wants a little more than the budget-friendly airline. They want a little more what Sunfire offers, but truly in a way that is cost efficient. So I'm going to hand it over to my attorney to flesh that out.
Oh, well, yes, certainly. And Madam Mediator, in addition, I was just wondering, it seems as though we've reached a bit of an impasse in terms of the semantics of talking about the lounges and the specific aspects that makes up Sunfire's luxury brand. Do you have any suggestions after, of course, hearing response on how to productively move this conversation forward?
Thank you for the question, Dr. Niven. I've heard several discussions, and what I noticed here is that your main focus is middle-class clientele. And Sunfire mentioned that they will still have that touch of luxury. However, they will downgrade, so this will not be as luxury as in Sunfire originally. And Moon Airways is touching on the matter of that. The middle class does not require a lot of luxury amenities, but a little bit upgrade, a little bit like bonuses here. So this is what I see here, and of course I cannot recommend you some offer from my opinion. However, I can give you the direction. So maybe you have to think about the percentage of luxury or low cost prevailing in your middle class clientele. And this will help you to understand who must introduce more in the Sun Moon Airways. So this is my suggestion here, and if you have any other questions, you're
Happy to hear your response from the earlier question, but thank you, Madam Mediator, for providing some context in the direction we should go.
Absolutely, thank you. With regards to the concerns that you raised, I feel like we're missing a little bit of the point here. Now, if we were to got the lounges, the luxury chairs that are on our aircrafts, we'd be going closer to a budget airline. Now, obviously, there are price concerns, which is why we're trying to capture this market. But it is essential that this touch of luxury that we're mentioning is included in this. And for us as well, to put our name on this new brand. Something that we missed out on before is by using these very cost-effective measures and cost-cutting, we perhaps damage the brand, tarnish the brand in a way. And what we want to ensure is that this touch of luxury is maintained in Sun Moon. And it's not felt in any way that it's any way less superior than it should be. And I think that's what we're trying to maintain. And it's why we keep stressing on this point of luxury. Now, granted, the luxury is not the same as it will be with Sunfire as an individual airline. It still will have that touch of luxury. Racho?
Yeah, I'd just like to expand on what my client here just mentioned. The fact that Sunfire already brings in all these assets that we just mentioned, be it the lounges, the reclining seats, and as well as the upgrade onboarding experience. These are all assets we already bring in, and we feel like it's that hint of luxury that the joint venture needs. And we feel that it would be very expensive to invest in these new sort of seats or the lounges, which is why we would request that the equity be split by 55 saving Sunfire and 45 for Moon.
Thank you for that offer. I hope that if you allow me to be in charge, or specifically make the guidance in terms of my expertise in cost efficiency, hopefully it won't cost as much as you're anticipating. But at the same time, I think we have reached a bit of an impasse where we're going in circles, and I think it's at a point becoming a little bit counterproductive. So I think if it's okay, Madam Mediator, if we can call a brief caucus just to talk about a good direction to go forward and share some concerns, I think that would be best.
Yes, for sure. We will have the caucus with Moon, and I will ask Sunfire to leave us for a while. I will help you too. So where was it? Okay. So, Mr. Kazansky, Dr. Niven, just before we start our private session, I would like to remind you that the maximum time that we have is 15 minutes, and the private session is fully confidential, so if there's anything that you don't want me to disclose, please let me know. And how can I help you here?
Tina, I'd like to begin by disclosing a bit of confidential information that I think is guiding our conversation. Ideally, we would like to have a 50-50 structure of ownership, and that includes the profit sharing, because I do certainly believe, and I think this is being a bit devalued by the conversation, is that what I bring is not necessarily the luxury aspect. I make sure that the checks are in place and that the negotiations are done with all of our suppliers and all of our carriers to make sure that the company is making money. I think that is an incredibly important point. And I think to say that that's something that is not important, I think that's actually the baseline. To make money is a company's key priority in most times. So I'd like for that to be reflected in this conversation, and I would like to see if there's a way that I can propose that in a way that can maybe perhaps they can understand indifferently if perhaps I wasn't proposing it in the way that they could.
I would just like to echo my client's sentiments, and I think it speaks to their point of maintaining these luxuries. These luxuries need to be streamlined. My client has presented ways for this to happen through the bringing the IP to the joint venture of the Skylux. And in addition, he would be interested in discussing how using those automated booking systems could also benefit this joint venture. However, the precise reason of Sunfire seeking to implement their luxuries is why Mr. Kazansky would not be comfortable with them possessing a higher ownership stake, because that would just create that lack of oversight that led to the dissolution of the merger in the first place. So if that could just be contextualized, I think that would be helpful. And as my client stated, he truly is looking for more of that 50-50 ownership. And in addition, something, Madam Mediator, that you could propose is discussing a solution for impasses in decision-making and having veto power over certain decisions, as my client does recognize that a 50-50 split would lead to that governance vacuum.
Thank you so much for your questions and for asking for a caucus. I think that this was really necessary here. And what I can understand from your interest is that you don't want to repeat what was in the past. And that's why you are not accepting that 60-40 or 55 to 45% split, and you are proposing 50-50 split. And what I was wondering about here is that do you think that your objective of creating the middle class airline is possible with that 50-50 shares from the Sunfire and from the Moon?
I think that certainly is possible, and I think that gets to the second point of our conversation in terms of governance. Mm-hmm. I think to both balance our interests, and I think that's the most important part that I want all sides to remember, is that we have two interests that at one point were in significant conflict, and I think that's why we had 6 mediation sessions to really flesh that out. But now we're trying to figure out a way how to make those conflicting interests that align. And that's my key point. And I think that needs to be reflected in the profit sharing and in the allocation of ownership. That's my point.
Okay. So I suggest you to think about the bringing value for that IP Skylux cabin design, because we have several mentionings of that downgrading or upgrading assets from Sunfire. So you should, I think, emphasize on it. And also, you can also emphasize on that 50-50% split will benefit your company in the matter of profit. So this is my suggestions. This is like the navigation for you, what to discuss here. Do you have any other questions here? Maybe some additional, or there are...
I think that covers it. I definitely want to make sure that when we come back from this, where the tone is a little bit different in terms of appreciating both interests, because that'll really help the conversation go forward. And I think I'm certainly representing the fact that luxury interests are incredibly important, but I'd like to hear a little bit of that return in terms of how important it is to cut and make sure that the company is profitable.
And I just wanted to confirm that your main interest behind that 50-50 is that you will have that joint venture equal and avoid the past conflicts and disputes. Is it correct?
Yes. Especially in terms of profit sharing. And I think we can get into the governance and voting rights. I'd prefer that to be 50-50, but we also have some solutions available in terms of how we can resolve any kind of conflicts. And I would like to bring that up soon because we are, the time is running.
Yes, that's great. And also, you can think about using the objective criteria. This is one of the principles, Harvard principles of mediation that we use. So regarding the medium class clientele, you can use the objective criteria like for how much luxury is needed here and how much low cost is needed here to make a balance. So there will not be uncertainty in the model, in your business model. Okay.
I think that's great. Thank you so much.
Do you want me to summarize what has been said here, and what do you want me to bring to the table after the caucus ends?
Thank you, Tina. I think in the interest of time, we can invite them back in for joint session, and I am prepared to explain why the 55% ownership for Sunfire is non-amenable to my client, and willing to propose the 50-50 ownership and explain that system for an impasse for decision-making and veto power. And Madam Mediator, if you feel that this is not being well reciprocated, this conversation could then be tabled to go into that governance. And that is just elaborating to you where we plan to take the rest of the session.
Okay, so now I can finish the caucus? Okay.
Yes, you can. Thank you.
So we will call our Sunfire representatives. So welcome back. And before we start our joint session, I would like to ask, does Sunfire need a caucus here?
Not at the moment.
Okay, so great.
Thank you, Mr. Mitchell and Dr. Bradshaw, for allowing us that time to speak with the mediator. It was very productive. Just to recap, the last offer on the table was that 55-45% split favoring Sunfire, and something that I had shared with the mediator that I believe would be productive to shed light on here is the precise reasoning for prioritizing the luxuries, that if Sunfire also retained 55% control over that, that would just create this vacuum again where these systems are being implemented and there's no system to check the costs, right? The whole point of this joint venture is that you clients are going to be smart in how you invest in these luxury components, and there needs to be a return on investment on these luxuries in order to make this a profitable joint venture. That being said, an offer that my client is more comfortable with would be a 50-50 ownership split. This is a true partnership and this is equitable. I will let him elaborate on that. And something in addition that he will elaborate on is creating a system for impasses and veto power that would come along with a 50-50 split.
Thank you. So that's correct. I want to make sure that it's abundantly clear that I think we both bring important and distinct things to the table, and I would like that to be reflected in the profit-sharing model. And I would also like to move on to the governance structure. If you'd have any comments in terms of that 50-50 profit-sharing model, if you could just provide some context if you're interested in pursuing that.
Absolutely, 50-50 would be much better proposal than you taking 55 and us taking 45. And I'm glad that we're both able to budge and meet somewhere, perhaps in the middle. And as I was speaking to my counsel earlier, help us help you. You know, we want to make sure that both parties walk away from this table better than they were before. And obviously, this joint venture is exactly the way to go in that regard. So you mentioned this veto power and other governance controls. Could you perhaps elaborate on what exactly that entails, so we could perhaps consider this offer of 50-50?
Yes, but also I'd like to make sure I understand. Is that, you said you enjoy that offer, you like that offer of the 50-50 profit sharing? Is that something that you're willing to agree on? And then we can talk about governance?
We want to hear about the veto power that comes with the 50-50 offer, and then perhaps we could further discuss if we agree or not.
Yes, certainly. So I think one of the main issues that we came into conflict with is the fact that, and we'll touch on that certainly a bit later in the second agenda point in terms of spending, but to manage both these kind of conflicts in terms of when we want to decide which direction the company wants to go, to have a 50-50 ownership is honestly quite complicated in terms of direction and choosing whose vision is more important. But I want to emphasize that this is a partnership, and that's the reason why I'd like to make sure that both sides have an equal seat at the table. But in terms of the veto power, I think my attorney can speak on the legal matter and how that can be fleshed out further.
Certainly. So just to provide context behind the concept of having an independent advisor for when there is an impasse between Mr. Kazansky and you, Mr. Mitchell, there needs to be an independent third party who can come in and make decisions in the interest of both of you and in the interest of cost optimization while maintaining those luxuries for the company. So this person would be someone selected by both of you jointly who you would give that power, that final veto power to when you both reach an impasse in the future in making decisions that would come along with a 50-50 ownership split.
If I could just answer a question for my client here. We understand that you would like to talk about the legalities of the veto share, and we understand where you're coming from with the third party, mutually hired by both the parties. But since we believe that the 50-50% is somewhere leaving us in the side that we don't know if the brand will be preserved. Like Sunfire does have a very high brand and it values it very well. And if we look at the past mergers, well, that didn't go according to plan, did it? So we'll actually like us to have a certain veto power when it comes to these cost efficiencies that affect the brand. When we are introducing certain cost-effective measures, when it's affecting the brand, we'd like a certain amount of veto share on our side as well.
Well, the issue is that this isn't Sunfire. This is a joint venture. This is reflecting that true partnership. So Sunfire having veto power over Mr. Kazansky's cost optimization would bring you both, quite frankly, back to where you started, and that would be why that this joint venture wouldn't work out. And I'll let him speak more if he has thoughts on that.
Yes, I think we're getting a little bit caught up in the idea of a veto power. I want to emphasize a bit about what my attorney mentioned in terms of a committee that is shared by yourself and me, and an independent advisor that's selected by both of us. And why I think that's important is because if we both have a seat at the table and we can both have a conversation, I think any biases in terms of both maintaining brand and also maintaining cost efficiency can be taken to this advisor in terms of any dispute and then determined in a fair and equitable manner that both reflects our interests, and perhaps if Tina would like to serve as some kind of an advisor in a different capacity just in terms of conflict mediation and creating that kind of dispute resolution mechanism, I think that would be incredibly important for us to have that system in place.
I think I absolutely agree with you, but the timing is a little different. So where I'd like a third-party advisor, and what we went through earlier, would be with regards to governance, but a separate structure of governance, perhaps that we can get into later. But with regards to veto power, we believe that a veto power should be something that both you and I, Kazansky, hold individually. So if, say, I was supposed to propose this new idea of luxury or something to integrate into our brand, and you find it unacceptable, you could veto the idea. And the same would go for me. So if you had some cost-cutting measures that I strongly disagree with, and I think would tarnish the legacy that we have built and trying to tarnish the brand name that we're trying to build, I could perhaps veto it. And I feel like, Dr. Nevin, you've been mistaken a little bit. I feel like this is exactly the power that was missing in our previous structure. I feel like there was a governance vacuum there. And this veto power would have stopped a lot of the issues that we had previously. Now, obviously, Kazansky, you had made a lot of decisions in the previous this one, and I don't mean to point fingers in any regard, but I feel like if both of us were able to have an equal say as opposed to a missing committee and then you assuming total control, that would make a great difference in what we're trying to do. And I feel like I've said a lot of things. So, Miss Mediator, if you could perhaps summarize it, that would be greatly appreciated.
Yes, of course. So I think that we're already touching the question of governance here. And what was proposed by Moon is that there will be a committee plus independent advisor that will serve you as a third party, sometimes helping you to find a balance. I will not say conflicts because I don't want you to have conflicts anymore. And what is Sunfire's answer to this response is that there is no need in committee or any third party, but you want just to split that governance into 50-50 in order to not going back to the past structure, the previous structure here.
I think that's the correct interpretation. I think I misunderstood you perhaps earlier on, and I assumed that this was a unilateral veto power, but I think you fleshed it out quite well, and now I understand that this is a dual veto power that each of us will hold. And I'd actually like to make that offer a bit more robust that meets both of our interests, specifically because I think the veto power is actually a great idea, but I'm sure you can visualize how that can go if in a company, two individuals have a veto power without a third potential individual who can really see rationally in terms of what is really the best move for the business. It can completely take down a business if we're vetoing every and each decision. So I think we can agree to that veto power, but in case there's this incoming conflict that we consistently run into in terms of reverse veto and reciprocal vetoes, and we don't want it to end the way that this ended. So to address that governance vacuum, I suggest that we do a reciprocal veto power, and I think that's an excellent idea, but we combine that with the advisory committee, and that allows us to both, in terms of whenever there's a veto, we can really make sure that the independent third party can guide us through.
Absolutely, I absolutely love the line of thinking that you're following, because this is exactly what me and Bradshaw were discussing. And with regards to this third party, so the veto power would be separate, but it would also be contingent on the third party advisory council, and we name this the PPC. And I think it's quite legal in nature and has a lot of details, and I'll allow Dr. Bradshaw to flesh that out perhaps.
Yeah, so if I can just mention, me and my client were very happy when we came up with this committee, and I think the solution could be quite amenable to both sides here. So we've come up with the PPC, which is the Planetary Planet Committee. Basically, acknowledge that Moon and Sun are interstellar beings, so we decided to name it the PPC. So upon the formation of this committee, 3 people will be hired by Sunfire and 3 people from Moon, as well as 1 external expert who will be there to advise us on any other conflicts. And this committee will recognize if there are any impasse with regards to the cost efficiency or the luxury aspect. And I think based on their opinion, we can further delve into whatever solutions there are. I'd also like to talk about how this committee will be function and when it will be formed. We propose forming this committee 1 month before the signing of the joint venture agreement, and 1 month before the execution of it. Yeah. So we'd like to hear your thoughts on the PPC as well.
I just want to mention that I think our wires are getting a bit crossed in terms of what we're discussing. I think we're still really in terms of the ownership and structure part of this agenda, because this is in terms of if there's a dispute within management and not necessarily in terms of any decision-making like budget cuts that we encountered earlier on. So I just want to make sure those two things stay separate, and I do enjoy that idea of the PPC, and we can certainly flesh that out more and more. But I genuinely think that discussing the ownership structure and what happens in terms of a dispute is good to settle now, and then we can discuss the model afterwards.
Certainly. So just to clarify that last offer that did sound enticing to you, Mr. Mitchell, that would be a 50-50 ownership split for this joint venture. And in addition to your idea of the veto, the reciprocal veto power, this third-party independent advisor to also, as my client put it, ensure that the two of you are not just consistently vetoing each other. And that is what I was insinuating by the governance vacuum that did occur in the past merger. So yes.
So just to address that, the reason why we're discussing governance and ownership hand in hand, perhaps, is, as we said, this is very fluid. And one of the biggest concerns we had with giving up ownership, or perhaps letting you have majority ownership, is what if what happened in the past happens again? The last thing we want is for us to repeat our mistake and let history repeat itself. Now, obviously, we realize that both parties have concerns with ensuring that this baby of ours grows and becomes something that's truly captures this market and makes it profitable and beneficial to the both of us, which is why we want to discuss it hand in hand. Now, from what I'm hearing, both parties are amenable to a 50-50 split, granted that there are some governance mechanisms put in place. So perhaps you could say we have an in-principle agreement with regards to ownership, but it is contingent on the governance. So we can say we have an in-principle agreement with regards to the split, but we can further discuss the PPC and other offers that you probably have.
Summarize what has been said, because we are having both these aspects discussed like in parallels. So what is Sunfire talked about right now is that you agreed on in condition for the ownership of 50-50 split, but the governance issues should be covered first. And for the Moon, you are highlighting the idea of balance in governance, and to help you to make this process more effective, I would like to highlight your mutual interests, and I have to confirm them. First of all, regarding the governance, are both parties willing to have the balance, like equal split in governance?
I'm willing to do so, contingent on the veto power and the committee that, the advisory committee that I mentioned forward.
Likewise.
And you both want to have third party or some committee to have the control in this governance. Not the control, but to be a part of that governance.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, certainly an advisor, and we can flesh out the details of how we choose that, I think, at a different date.
Mm-hmm. So what
At
you...
a, sorry, at a different date, or continuing this?
Yes, I think that how we decide on who that third party is in particular doesn't necessarily need to happen at this moment. I think there are bigger picture ideas that we should flesh out.
Just a clarification.
And so what was proposed from the Sunfire is PPC, that it was planetary, and the second word?
Planet.
Planning.
Plenary?
So planetary planning.
Planetary Planning Committee. And are you agreed to have that third body in the form of the committee, not a like independent advisor?
Talking about a committee instead of just a singular additional advisor is amenable to my client. However, he would be interested to hear his initial envision of this independent advisor was strictly for internal disputes just between you, Mr. Mitchell, and Mr. Kazansky. So how would this committee impact, more broadly speaking, what the brand review committee was seeking to uphold in terms of brand preservation and overall financial costs?
So the main difference here is that opposed to the brand review committee, this would be a mandatory committee. And this would have to start before this baby of ours perhaps takes off. And what we want to achieve is that to ensure that any cost-cutting effects don't necessarily affect the brand value of it, and perhaps any new luxury integration things that we're trying to include don't perhaps breach the cost cap that we have. And I believe you can flesh out more details.
Since we are getting into the intricacies of the planning committee, I'd just like to acknowledge the same. So three of the members would be from Sunfire, 3 of the members would be from Moon, and 1 expert, obviously mutually agreed upon by both parties. So how it would work is that all the reports that the planning committee would get, they would be reviewed. And upon them not agreeing with whatever reports we're receiving, then we will take a mutual decision by a simple majority, which is 51%. And whatever decision the PPC makes regarding either the cost cutting or as well as the luxury aspect of the joint venture will be taken upon and be discussed by, obviously, you, Mr. Mitchell, and you, Mr. Kazansky. Mediator, if you could probably just summarize what I just mentioned.
Yes, and I think that this will be better if I can visualize the offer from you. So I will really try to be faster here. So regarding the governance.
I think Tina's waited for this opportunity to use the second board.
Yes. So the governance, this is just a form of offer, not an agreement. So there will be a 50-50 split. And this is you all agree on, 50-50 split. Yeah. Is it correct? Yes. And there we have some things brought by, Sunfire, and some things brought by Moon. So we have a PPC with 3 people from Sunfire plus 3 people from Moon, and from your side we have that independent advisor. Yeah.
I'd like to emphasize, I think we're, again, getting a bit of our wires crossed. This committee, I believed, was in terms of the governance structure for the brand and oversight when it comes to maybe too much spending or a focus on what needs to be luxury. I think that belongs, can you correct me if I'm wrong, if that belongs in a different bucket rather than this one?
No, that's absolutely right.
That is right.
Yeah.
So I think that chart should reflect the fact that it's a 50-50 split in terms of profit sharing and governance. There will be vetoes, of course, but those vetoes will be addressed by an independent third party that's going to touch those matters between myself and Mr. Mitchell. This is a separate matter that we're going to touch on in the governance structure in terms of.
So this is
You
the
can go ahead.
separate.
I think there's a little bit of a misunderstanding there. With regards to the veto power, we said that would be reciprocal, and perhaps that a third party wouldn't be involved in it, and an independent advisory wouldn't be involved in it. And to make sure that this reciprocal veto isn't misused, perhaps, we could include it as one of the authorities of the PPC. Love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yes, I'm clearly our wires are crossed. Clearly, there's some conversation that's not getting through. So let's make my intentions very clear. I think having this committee is excellent in terms of it's excellent in terms of discussing what is spent and what is considered luxury. But having 3 people on each side to go over every discussion that presumably the CEO and the CFO would have, it seems to be incredibly unproductive and would undermine our roles as leaders in this company. I think we should both have the right to have a conversation, and then if, in case we have some kind of disagreement, there would be one individual who we both are involved in appointing that can discuss such matters thoroughly with us. And then this PPC, I can totally agree with that, but in terms of a different part of this agenda.
I'm sorry to ruin your fun of using the board, but I think there's a lot of back and forth going on here. And I think if perhaps you could use a caucus at this moment, at this juncture, it would
Yes,
be
of
greatly
course.
appreciated.
Oh, sorry.
Are you all right?
Okay, I was saying too much, and of course we can have a caucus with Sunfire. So I will ask Moon to leave us for a while.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So you can go there, please. So before starting our caucus, I'd like to remind you that the maximum time is 15 minutes, and the caucus is fully confidential process. And if you want me to not disclose something, please let me know about it. And how can I help you here in the private session?
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Could you possibly just let us know how much time we have left?
We have 18 minutes left
All right.
overall.
Thank you very much. With regards to the discussion we've been having, obviously there's a lot of back and forth. And perhaps I note some hesitance on their side. Now, this hesitance obviously is so that they secure their best interests, and we recognize that, and we're really trying to help them. So the things that are most important to us initially were to make sure that we have a larger part of the ownership share, to ensure that this governance vacuum doesn't exist anymore. And this is when we propose that a 50-50 split with regards to preferential shares. So we would have a share in the profit, which would secure our interests, because we are supplying more in terms of luxury. And perhaps this was brushed off by them, which is all right again. But then we started to discuss this brand review committee, and we truly believe that this brand review committee, the PPC, not the brand review committee, sorry, the PPC greatly benefits both parties. And I think we were trying to flesh out the details, but somewhere in between we got lost in communication.
So we feel that the PPC was inspired to help both our parties. So this would introduce yourself in case there was any, a lot of back and forth during the ownership. Like we agreed on a 50-50% split, and also the veto rights. And in case the veto rights were exercised poorly by the CEOs of the companies, then that's when the committee comes into place. It will review the actions and give its report. And upon its report, we obviously take further actions. So I think that's why we lost it in translation.
Yeah. Okay. So do you want me to make some suggestions and navigations right here in the regarding the PPC committee, and how can you work on that offer?
Yes, we'd love to hear your recommendations.
Okay, so what I heard from Moon, first of all, I would like to mention that they were questioning that the choice of 3+3 representatives of Sunfire and Moon, because there are still there is still equal quantity of people from each company, and they are a little bit concerned about the decisions that will be again split. And maybe you can work on the voting system, or including that independent advisors here in PPC. I think that the most problem here is the structure of the PPC. And also, I just wanted to have a question. I remember that you had a brand review committee clause in your agreement, and there was a opportunity to not have that brand review committee. And what will be regarding the PPC? Is this obligatory for your joint venture?
This is mandatory. Like
This is
there is no
mandatory.
going forward without it. But to clarify your question with regards to the structure of the voting, when we say 3+3, this also includes an individual neutral party that will be chosen by both Sunfire and Moon. Because obviously 3+3, if there were a split in the votes, obviously a decision would not go forward. So the total number of members in the PPC would be 7, just to clarify.
I think that this was the main point that you have to emphasize on. You can put that in your offer and say that there will be one independent person chosen by Moon and Sunfire, and I hope that this will align with your both interests here.
Absolutely.
So I really hope that my answer at some extent helped you. And do you have any other questions before our times run out?
Anything else you need?
Nothing else to add.
Okay, thank you. And is there anything that you don't want me to disclose?
I think all of this is quite open because this is what we've been trying to discuss. So if perhaps you could convey our idea for them because they're not understanding it when we say, that would be greatly appreciated.
Okay, so you want me to bring that on the table and explain it in the very, very simple way, right?
Yes, just bridge the
Okay.
gap that exists.
Okay, okay. So do you need a summary? I think we're just running out of the time. Okay, that's good. Okay, thank you. So please call for Moon Airlines. Welcome back. So we had a very fruitful caucus with Sunfire, and I think we were able to clarify some misunderstandings here. So Sunfire asked me to bring to the table what they offered to you. So in this PPC, in this committee, there will be another seventh person, the independent person that will be chosen by both Moon and Sunfire. You will choose the independent expert or advisor, however you want to call it. And the PPC will be mandatory. Contrary to the brand review committee that you had in the merger, the PPC will be mandatory to the joint venture. So here's the question: does it align with your interest? And does it align with your interest that there will be a seventh person, the independent person that will be chosen by both Moon and Sunfire? And just before your answer, I'm sorry, I wanted also to ask if you need a caucus as well.
I don't think at this
Okay.
point we need a caucus.
Okay, so I just wanted to not forget my points.
Certainly. So addressing this PPC committee, my client is in agreement that there does need to be a mandatory committee instituted. However, it would not be productive for either of you to have a committee overseeing every single decision. You both operate best in your individual capacities, and you know how to do that. So to have a committee overseeing all of those decisions, I'll let my client elaborate, does not feel productive. However, if we both can agree to a 50-50 ownership split with that independent advisor purely to advocate on those veto decisions, then that first agenda point can be concluded and agreed upon, and my client would be happy to discuss the importance of having a brand review committee, PPC, or whatever we want to call it, for this governance split. But this committee would mostly be to institute guidelines from the outset of this joint venture so that Mr. Kazansky knows how to cut costs and he knows what is important.
Exactly. I think that was the perfect way to put it. We have a particular interest in making sure that yourself and I can make decisions. I'm not sure why there needs to be another 3 Sunfire employees and 3 Moon employees conducting this vote. I think the individual who's going to be a neutral will be sufficient. But I do understand the conversation in terms of the committee, and I want to touch on that in terms of the governance structure and the brand and oversight committee. As my attorney mentioned, this will create a standard that we will be applying on the beginning of this partnership. It will not necessarily have to be one that oversees, but it'll be one that generates a standard that we will be able to use and discuss and provide to that neutral, who will then be able to make certain decisions in terms of any conflicts. Additionally, we'd also like to throw in perhaps the way that this committee will convene, you and I can sit down and bring that neutral over in terms of quarterly check-ins. I think it's important that we have a better communication. Really, the reason this fell apart the first time is because I was siloed into my role and you were siloed into your role, and there was a real communication gap. And I was able to do what I thought was right, and you thought you were able to do what you were was right. But again, this communication is critical, and so we need standards that fit those needs and also have a neutral that is able to facilitate both of our entrepreneurial spirits and desires to really make this brand something bigger than us.
So we thank you for your concerns, firstly, Dr. Nevin and Kazansky. But like we mentioned, in the merger, everything went bad because the brand reservation committee was informed. And we feel that it's very imperative that if we move forward with the joint venture, that we do form such a committee, which is why we mentioned the PPC. We're not saying we strip away the productivity or your powers within the organization. We're just saying have a committee to oversight all of the main key integration that we do add into the joint venture with regarding to the cost efficiency as well as the luxury services. And this is only due to the past mergers, all the drawbacks we face from it, and we have to understand that brand erosion comes at a much higher rate to Sunfire than to Moon. So we'd like to hear your thoughts on the same.
My client certainly does have a shared interest with your client in instituting some form of committee. It can be called the PPC if this is desired. However, Mr. Kazansky would like to hear your thoughts, Mr. Mitchell, on why such a committee should be limiting both of you to act in your individual capacities rather than having them from the outset just institute guidelines for you both to follow, and if at some point there is an impasse, the committee can use these preset guidelines in order to make that determination.
Absolutely. I feel like there's been a little bit of miscommunication here, and I want to bridge that gap. The PPC would not be acting on all decisions that both of us would be taking, of course. It would only be on things that materially breach with regards to luxury services or the brand identity, let's say. So materially breach the brand identity. So these, the decisions that the PPC would make would be limited to anything that is materially breached. Now, obviously, material breach is something that's broad and it's hard to define. Perhaps that's something that could be fleshed out on a later date. But I just want to make it clear that all decisions would not be governed by the PPC. Specifically, only the ones that would be materially breaching.
Thank you for that clarification, and this just goes to my client's point of why these structures need to be implemented in the first place to know what would be a material breach. That would be the precise purpose of this committee.
I'd like to know, are you open to having this guideline ahead of time? I know you mentioned that you'd like to have the committee formed a month before closing, and I think out of the gate, we're certainly welcome to have that done a month in advance, before closing, before any of this is done. But I think what's important is discussing really the content. And I know you mentioned that what's most interesting to you is that this is going to be a brand review committee. And it's funny, this term is just giving me a little bit of, I remember how we decided that maybe there'd be a brand review, maybe there wouldn't be. But clearly the main issue is not just the brand committee. Clearly there's another issue, that certain cuts need to be maintained and certain cuts need to be instituted. So if you'd like to flesh out exactly what the role of cost cutting and the brand review committee would be in that, and as well as the guidelines that could provide us both an understanding and a neutral understanding of exactly how to apply those guidelines.
Absolutely. So when I say material breach, I don't only mean cost cutting. So with regards to the decisions that are being made, if there's any decision that the PPC would be considering as materially changing or tarnishing the reputation of Sunfire or Moon, PPC would have to step in and make sure that this decision is not made prior to discussing what exactly would be the net results of this.
If I could just clarify the stance again. So the PPC would not make decisions, but then whatever decision that you make as the CEO of the joint venture will be looked upon by the PPC, and if it goes against the values or the identity of both your companies, then they will pass the report to us and we will have a look at it.
I see. Madam Mediator, would you be able to, there seems to be a lot of going on, and I'd like for you to synthesize it before I can make an informed decision on that offer.
Yes, for sure. And a quick reminder that we have 6 minutes left. This is my obligation to keep the time. So regarding the PPC, what we've been told here, first of all, I'd like to address the Moon, that you don't want to, that you need then institution, the committee, to to resolve the issues when you have the cost-cutting measures or any other measures that you want to implement in your new company. And what's been said from Sunfire is that the PPC will not question every decision made, and this will be only used when it is needed. So is it all?
Also, just to clarify, since my client is open to coming down to that 50% share of valuation, we do find it is imperative that we have such a committee formed to look at the identity and preserve it. And we just like to know that if this is amenable to you and that if this committee could be formed, not only would it support my client's interests, but it will also support your interests.
Certainly, Dr. Bradshaw, I think you put it perfectly where this committee needs to be formed to identify the interests and preserve it. That is exactly aligned with my client's interests and what he is seeking to gain from a committee like this. And thank you, Tina, for recapping that this committee would be both presenting those standards at the outset and overseeing decisions when there is an impasse in decision making. Additionally, my client can expand upon this if it is of interest. However, this committee could also keep track of the luxury items that are being implemented, to keep track of the return on investment seen from those, to know if that would be an informed luxury to continue with the brand.
Thank you. Yeah, I want to echo that, but I guess I want some clarification. So now you're saying that you are in agreement in principle in terms of the 50-50 profit sharing and governance structure that will include a PPC, but that PPC will be exclusive specifically to the in terms of the brand review and cost cutting. Really, I want to bring it back to the point why we're doing this, right? Because I think that's important. These conversations seem like reminiscent of a kind of conversation we would have had years ago before we went into this, and I think it's important that we make sure we don't repeat those same errors. Our primary clientele is going to be those middle market consumers. And I think it's important to remember that in terms of forming and drafting a standardized guideline that provides us information in terms of how we can make any kinds of decisions and exactly what's within the scope of the brand committee and what's within the scope of necessary cuts. So if you could just speak about your interest in terms of making sure, I know you mentioned material breach, but in terms of the legitimate aspects of the guideline, are there aspects that you'd like to specifically see in there that will allow us to make decisions going forward?
Just to ask me to have the time to answer that question.
Yeah, we have 3 minutes.
Okay, perfect. So with regards to material breach, as I mentioned, the specifics, of course, can be fleshed out on a later date, but just to get into a rough overview of what it would be like, if we were to cut down on lounge facilities, or perhaps the catering services that we have, or perhaps even change the seats on the plane that we have, these are, of course, decisions that would affect our customer base. Obviously, the customer base that Sunfire has is there because of the appreciation for the services that it does provide. So if any of those aspects were to be changed in a cost-cutting effort, this would obviously have to be run by the PPC. Now, of course, this is just an example. I'm sure there are multiple other avenues where the PPC can act to ensure that the services and the product provided by Sunfire and Sunmoon, not Sunfire, sorry, is maintaining a certain standard.
We do hear your concerns that this is targeting a middle-class economy, and we're not in any way saying that this goes more into the luxury aspect or make it more expensive to them. All we're saying is that both the brand's values and its inspiration has to be looked into and maintain that we preserve these brands. That's all we're asking through the PPC.
So if I understand you correctly, you're saying you want to not preserve the other brands, but preserve this particular brand, because I think it is its own brand. It's its own niche. We're filling a gap in the market that is incredibly important to fill. There are middle-class consumers that are interested in having a bit of that luxury experience while not having to pay an arm and a foot. So if that's something you are willing to preserve, and I think that is something that needs to be preserved, I think in principle we can have a fruitful agreement and really draft those terms in a way that meets both of our needs.
Thank you so much. Do you want me to summarize, or should I leave the floor to Mr. Mitchell?
I think you can summarize and then I can say whether I agree or not with all the terms.
Okay. Or you can first say if you agree.
In principle, I think everything that we've talked about is exactly what me and Bradshaw were trying to put forward. So I think at this last minute or the 90th minute, we can say that we've come to an agreement with regards to all these terms.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that. Thank you.
Okay. So is this agreement in principle or real agreement? Just
Agreement in principle.
okay, for you boss, right? Okay,
Yes.
that's great. And let me just summarize it and finally use that whiteboard. So for the ownership and the structure, In the first part of the mediation, you agreed on 50-50 split, just in condition and connection with the governance. So I'm putting this 50-50 split. And for the governance as well, you have that split with the PPC. Is it right? Yes. PPC. And I guess that the structure of PPC, how do you want to structure it? It can be furtherly be a homework for your legal counsels. And I will mention that this is an in principle. So, because
I'd also like to mention one point to be added onto that board is that we would be drafting eventually down the line guidelines that make sure to cover exactly what the PPC would and would not be judging.
so you all also agree on the guidelines.
So that's exactly what the
Okay,
agreement
okay.
is in principle and not a
Okay.
solid agreement.
So I will add the guidelines near the PPC. Are we not missing something?
I think that's it.
Okay, that's great.
Sign before closing.
Wow, we're right on time. But I would like to allocate some time for your closing remarks because we cannot just stand up and leave here. So please, if any of you want to make some closing remarks.
Thank you so much. I must say, Tina, your presence here has been definitely appreciated. And I'm glad that this is, I'm sorry that this is coming to a close. I wish we could spend more time, and obviously we have one more session with regards to guidelines, but I wish we could spend more time together. And as I said, if you ever feel like joining these hot yoga sessions, you're more than welcome. And thank you, Kazansky, for being so cooperative in this session and agreeing to come to this in-principle agreement. Now, I realize there were some communication gaps in between, and we apologize for that, but I'm glad you could see the bigger picture with regards to this, and we can hopefully make this idea of Sun Moon truly take off and touch the stars.
Thank you for that, Mr. Mitchell. And I think we can just summarize that we have come into two in-principle agreements here today with regards to the ownership as well as the governance aspect. And I'm glad that all the progress we made has also led to these two solutions we've come up to today. And thank you so much, Tina, for all the help and effort you put in here today. None of this would be possible without you. And you too, Mr. Kazansky and Dr. Nevin. All of this is thanks to you guys. And we are hopeful that we can keep cooperating in the future. I think we're in that aspect now where we can just exchange emails and cooperate over there as well. So, and I'd like to end by saying Rome wasn't built in a day. So we'll take our time and make sure that whatever structure we come into the end will be perfect. Thank you.
Mr. Mitchell, Dr. Bradshaw, Tina, I'd like to keep this quick. I hope we learned a lot from this, and I think we did. And really the goals that we established in this 6th mediation session is something that will guide us to make sure we meet the needs of both our consumers in Moon and in Sunfire, and also just as much to those middle-class consumers for Moon Sun. So thank you so much for your time, and I really appreciate how cordial you were in these sessions.
Yes, and I echo all of my clients' sentiments and gratitudes.
Thank you, dear parties. And now I will have my closing remarks. So what I see as the result of the present mediation is that you, Sun, and you, Moon, are continuing to go from your own orbit, getting your own benefits. However, and the ultimate benefit goes to the Earth, enlightening it. And the Earth is your customers. So today we once again witness that the mediation is an effective tool, leaving every participant in victory. And I'm repeating these words third time, I guess. Never cut where you can untie. And here I see that you're not untying, but tiring. And that's a very great opportunity for you. And congratulations on your newly developed joint venture. I really hope that this will go very productive, and I will be the passenger of Sun Moon Airways. And just before we close, sorry. So I have a safe flights. Congratulations. Thank you all.
Very nice time.
Hello, everyone. That was a great session, right? I was watching you on YouTube. You are famous now. Well, and the video will be saved on YouTube so you can show your friends or family. I'm sure they are very proud of you. You did a great job. I love this airplane flying here. And I'm sure the judges will have a hard time deliberating, right? So I will kindly ask the judges to stand up and follow Kinar to the deliberating room. And also to all of you, please stay here. We have like a little break for the judges to deliberate, but we have some videos playing with the photos of the competition. We really think you're going to like it. And after that, we will have the award ceremony. And if I can give some spoilers, many of you got some awards, so please stay here to know who is going to win, okay? And the teams here, you can take a picture together, and then you can go to celebrate with your teams. Thank you.
We're going to resume the final round of the 2025 CPR International Mediation Competition here in Sao Paulo, Brazil. Welcoming everyone back who's online and those who are here with us in person in the auditorium at Insper. So I'd like to introduce the judges who have scored and judged the final round, and then we're going to call the students up to join them on stage, okay? So first, we have here closest to me, Roberto Custer. He's at Falek and Asociados. We have Anna Sambold. She is a neutral from the United States. We have next to her, James Mangerere from Kenya. Also a practicing neutral, and he's in Kenya. Next to him is Liana Gorberg Valdotaro. She's here from Brazil. And on the end is Rafael Alves. Rafael is from Suto Korea. He is here in Brazil, and he's on our Brazilian advisory board. Okay. So next, for the students who competed in this round, I'd like to call up the mediator from Tashkent, Rosie Hayon Kuchkarova. Okay. And playing Sunfire, we had the team from Jindal Global Law School. Yes, please. And playing Moon, we had Cardozo Law School. So now we're going to listen in to hear some of the judges' feedback for the teams who competed in the final round. Thank you.
Hello there. Good afternoon. First of all, thank you for this amazing round. I don't know if you're watching The White Lotus Season 3, but I do need my lorazepam right now. This is an anxiety medicine that she always takes, and like, this was tense, come on. Amazing round. You were very, very good. I would just want to first thank Kinar and everyone for the invitation to be here. It's always great to see the young students negotiating the case that I created, alongside with a couple of applause with Alvaro. Where's Alvaro? Alvaro there. This guy is amazing. He's never here because he's sick during the competition, so he was not here present last year's. But this guy is amazing, right? The problem, and also Camila Davi and Kyle Talmason. These are the masterminds behind the problem. I'm usually the pretty face here. So it's amazing how you got the parts and understood the problem, the fact pattern, and how you were, negotiating with it. So I feel very, very strongly happy that you got the fact pattern and the rules, and so it was great to see. Something that I would like to praise about was the anchoring effect of both teams. I mean, we gave you the aspiration value and the reserve value, and you did have a zone of possible agreement of only 5% between you. It was between 55% for Sunfire, for you, Moon, and 50-50 for you. And the anchoring effect, so you took that information and you went, both sides went 5% upper than you could. Then from your aspiration value. So it was really nice to see the anchoring effect that led effectively to the impasse and the use of Caucus. But one thing that I would like to mention a lot, how you entered the numbers real quickly. It was sun and rainbows. Sun is pretty, moon as well, but have you seen dawn and dusk? And then exactly to the numbers, like really quickly. And I'm glad that you took very seriously the negotiation. But that's it. Thank you so much for the negotiation.
Well, first of all, congratulations for making it all the way to the final round. It was evident that you put a lot of work and you put a lot of time and you put your heart into this negotiation. I really enjoyed watching the whole negotiation. It was very stressful, but I really have big hopes for the future, for all the powerful impact that you will have in the world. And I'm really looking forward to flying in that new sun moon.
First of all, we've had a very good experience since the date we came here, and I want to thank the organizers for inviting us for this competition. And all of you are winners, even if you are not seated in the front here. There's one thing I want to tell you. The experience we have had, we have been doing a number of these competitions, judging. What I saw in all of this process was what we call excellence in execution. You are all excellent. And the people who are in front here, you are extremely gorgeous. I've just been watching, and it was very difficult to judge when you have people who are almost the same. I want to congratulate everybody, and I can see we are improving the standards of mediation worldwide. And that's the reason why we go all over trying to see that mediation really works. What you have shown us is excellent presentation of the functions of a good mediator. Continue improving standards wherever you go, and we wish you well in your life, in practice as future mediators. Thank you very much.
I just want to congratulate you all, not only the finalists, but you all who came to this competition. I wish we had this kind of initiative before, but I just want to thank you, CPR, for bringing the competition to Brazil. So we have, from some years and now, the opportunity to have it and to help students and to prepare and to improve the dispute resolution lawyers and the field. And you did a great job, not only in the communication skills, negotiation skills, and all the aspects, the anchoring, the teamwork, but acting, is the role play, is jumping into really the role and engaging, and of course, being tense. I know you all are, and having fun. And just leave the tough job upon us, because it was really tough, because the level was so top-notch. It was really tough, and at the same time, hard on scoring, but easy, because it was a really, really good panel. Thank you.
First of all, thank you for the kind invitation to the organizing committee. It's always a joy to be part of, to be judging here in the competition. Congratulations to all of you and to the other competing teams and competing individuals. It was fun to watch. I second Eliana's comments on how you stepped in your roles. So the role-playing part was, I would say, outstanding for everyone, so great job. I've been following the competition for many years now. You know, it gets more competitive every year, so it's good to see that we are on the rise. And I do want to take some moments to acknowledge the hard work that has been done by the committee, starting by Knar and Diego, the chairs. The hard work that you put for this competition is just impressive, and also for the entire committee. We are very proud to host this competition here in São Paulo, truly global competition. So thank you everyone coming from all over the world to São Paulo, and thank you Insper, thank you Caio again for being such a great partner to CPR and having us here at Insper with these great facilities. It helps a lot. And congratulations to all the students, and that's it.
Okay, so were there any more comments? No? We want to thank the great. We want to thank the final round judges. We want to thank the competing teams in the final round. Could we give them one more round of applause? I think they really worked for it. So, with that, we are going to pause the program for a few moments while we reset the stage for the award ceremony. Again, I want to congratulate all of the finalists and all of the teams who participated here. And if you give us a few moments, we'll be back on the schedule. It says at 4 o'clock Brazilian time, 4 p.m. So we will be back on the stage in a few moments with the award ceremony. And then we have a few people to thank: the judges, the sponsors, the teams, the room supervisors, and I want to make sure that we give everyone their proper acknowledgement at that time. So please stay with us, okay? Those of you online, come back at 4, please. Okay, thank you very much. Here because we've learned to be on time this week together. So we're going to be starting right on time. Can I ask my co-chair Diego to join me on stage? Okay. So welcome back to the 2025 CPR International Mediation Competition, or as we lovingly call it, the IMC. I want to welcome everyone back. We have just completed the final round. We are going into the award ceremony, and we do have several people and institutions that we would like to thank. So we're going to do that first, and then we're going to thank the students too. Would you like to thank the organizing committee?
Okay. So first, I would like to thank our organizing committee, Franco Gevard, who's always a winner here, a champion. Julia, as well, always here with us, and Marcieli. They've done such a hard work putting everything together, so thank you very much. I'd like to thank our problem writing team, Roberto Custer, our genius and pretty face behind the problem, Alvaro, Kyle, and the whole team. Thank you very much. And Camila. That's it.
And also a committee member that was new this year, she wasn't able to join. She's a neutral in California. I want to say a shout out, if she's watching us at home, to Tatevik Kechians. Listen, I want to tell you something very important about this organizing committee. These are all working legal professionals. They are attorneys, they are mediators, they are superstars in their own right. They take time out of their busy schedule to be here with us to help. I cannot thank them enough. I mean, if I spent the next hour thanking them, it wouldn't be enough. So I really want to give a big round of applause to the organizing committee. Thank you so much. Okay. Next, I also want to acknowledge the teams who worked really hard to be here. What you may not know, those of you back home, we have 18 teams here, but there were a lot more who applied to be here. So by the time they arrived here in Sao Paulo, in my book, they had already won. It's a very competitive application process to be here. And so big congratulations to all the teams. I would like to take a minute to read through the list of all 18 teams, if Diego will help me.
Yeah. Okay, let's start. American University, Washington College of Law. Cardozo Law School, Fordham Law School, Georgetown University Law Center, São Paulo Law School of Fundação Getúlio Vargas, Jindal Global Law School, National Law School of India University, Bangalore, Pontifical Catholic University of Paraná, Pontifical Catholic University of Rio de Janeiro, Sunspo Paris Law School, Tashkent State University of Law, the West Bengal National University of Juridical Sciences, Universidade de Brasília, Universidade Federal do Rio Grande do Sul, Universidade Presbiteriana Mackenzie, University of Nairobi, University of São Paulo, Yale Law School.
Okay, so again, congratulations to those 18 teams, and thank you for putting in the time and effort and really just doing everything you had to do to be here. We know it was a lot, and we really, really appreciate it. So I also want to acknowledge the room supervisors. We had a fantastic team of volunteers helping us this year. And when I call your name, if you would just stand up and say hi to the crowd so they remember who you are. We had Evelyn. Wow, she's popular. Okay. Deborah, she was with us today. Luana. Anna. Luis is not with us today, but we'll pass our cheers to him. Lucas. And Victoria. So it took a lot of people to make this competition possible. We're really grateful to all of you. Listen, we have to acknowledge another really important group. The host school who welcomes us is Insper. They have, as you saw, a beautiful building. They have a very warm, welcoming staff, and the students here who are, even though they were in final exams, I always say they look like the happiest students. I don't know what Insper is doing, but these students are so happy. I don't remember being that happy in law school. So with that, I'd like to just call up Professor Caio Rodriguez to say a word or two on behalf of Insper. And please know that we're very grateful to him for his support.
So hello, good afternoon, everyone. Very quick words. I just want to say that Insper does not take for granted that we are chosen every year in the past 3 years by CPR to do this event. We are very, very honored to do it. And we would really love to do it again, if possible, because, and I'm not a very religious person, but the metaphor that comes to mind is a biblical one. As the world seems to me to be getting worse, actually, on average, or even more volatile, if you want to not put too harsh words on it, more volatile. The fact that we are able to stand for an activity in which we are valuing and defending non-violent, non-aggressive, non-litigious attitudes and ways of dealing with conflict seems to me like an act of hope. So this competition is actually an act of hope in the midst of what can be a very volatile period in the world. And the fact that this act of hope is actually carried out by young adults, young students, is even better. So for us, as I said, it's a privilege, it's an honor, and I congratulate everyone involved. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Kyle. We feel really supported by you. We appreciate that. And as I said, so this competition is a global international competition. It takes a lot of support to make this happen. And I do want to acknowledge our sponsors this year who help us. They also help the students directly. A lot of students apply for scholarship fund support, and our sponsors help us to do that. So it's important for me to acknowledge our global ADR champions this year were DLA Piper, King and Spalding, Microsoft, Williams and Connolly. And our silver sponsors this year were USC Gould School of Law in California, ICFML. Our cocktail reception is hosted by Falek and Asociados. Thank you so much. We're looking forward to that. Yeah. And we had scholarship fund donors this year who are Judge John de Blasi and Thomas Valenti. Our IMC friend was Cardozo School of Law, and our media partner this year was Arbitration Channel, which is a new partnership I'm really excited about. So thank you to Arbitration Channel for their support. So I think with that, we've thanked almost everyone. Did I forget?
Yeah. We forgot to thank you, Knar. Oh. The goddess of this competition. Thank you, Knar. Your work is incredible.
You're so sweet. Thank you. Okay. So with that, I do want to call up CPR Institute's president and CEO, Serena Lee, who, those of you who were here last year, recall she sent a video to say hello. This year we have her in person. We're so fortunate. And I'd love to have her just tell a little bit about CPR and why we do this competition. So, Serena Lee, please.
Thank you so much, Kennard. Thank you, Diego. And what a wonderful few days it's been. I have had so much emotion watching the competitions, watching all of you, talking to many of the students and talking to the judges. Again, my name is Serena Lee. I have the pleasure of serving as the CEO and president for the International Institute for Conflict Prevention and resolution. I know, I'm very excited. I wanted to give you the whole name of CPR because I think it's important that we emphasize a few things. One, we are international. We are a not-for-profit organization that was started almost 50 years ago to help parties prevent conflict and also to provide them with resolution. The reason why we are all here today is because we wanted to find a reason to bring together all the stakeholders to help us as a community to resolve disputes in a nonviolent way. As Professor Kyle had mentioned, it is so important that we involve the next generation and be part of a community to help with this effort. Unfortunately, conflicts are not seeming to be reduced. I suspect there will be conflicts in the future. Without your participation in these types of activities, we cannot do it alone. I am so thankful to see the points of light we are sending out into your communities, and I hope that you have made some friends. This was a very, very stressful event, a very educational one, but the fact that you have all come here to support this effort means so much to us, and we come back to the United States with this hope that we can help each other and hope that you will reach out to all of us as well. So with that, I want to thank all of you again for being part of this event. It's been I am without words. Kanar had told me, she says, when you come to the IMC, it is hard to explain to you the energy and the level of talent. You just have to witness it. You have to see it. And she was absolutely underestimating the effect of what it was. So I thank all of you. Please come and say hello to me if you've not had a chance to. And hopefully we'll see some of you again next year. Yeah? Okay.
Thank you, Serena. Okay, so I think this is the part we're all waiting for, right? The award ceremony. So I'm going to call up the organizing committee who's going to help give out the award certificates and the trophies. As you know, we have 6 categories, and we award the top 3 places in each of those 6 categories. So it's a lot of certificates to give out. Just a programming note, take your moment, right? When you come up to get your certificate, you're going to have your photo taken. So just enjoy the spotlight for a moment. You deserve it. You worked hard for it. And I also want to just note, in addition to those 6 categories that CPR is going to be awarding, we have our sponsor this year, ICFML, and they have very generously agreed to give full scholarship to their 4th edition of the ICFML summer program in Porto, Portugal this summer. And those scholarships will go to the best negotiation team, the best mediator, top 2 prizes, the best client, and the best counsel. So once we know who those people are, after they come up, then you'll also be receiving the ICFML scholarships. Yeah. But the good news is they've also very generously agreed to give a discount to every participant here. You will receive a discount to join their program as well. So there are at least 1 or 2 representatives here today that we can connect you to, and we're very grateful to ICFML for this very generous scholarship. Thank you very much, ICFML. Okay. Correct. Roberto. He forgot to come up. Okay, so we're going to get started now.
Aqui, né? Você quer que eu faça os 3? One of the many hats I do have in this competition. So I do work on the program. I'm a professor at Insper as well. So this is my house. And I also give awards. So just love to be here. Okay, so I'm going to tell you the 3rd, 2nd, and 1st place of mediators. Of course, you already know the 2nd and the 1st, but the 3rd should be a surprise, right? So, best mediators. 3rd place. Jessica Denery, Sciences Po, Paris Law School. You're about to be? Come on, Jessica. She's not Jessica, okay? Just a doppelganger. Okay. Thank you, not Jessica. For the 2nd place, Best Mediators, Maya Horwich, Cardozo School of Law. Congrats. Hi.
Congratulations.
Now, for the 1st place, and I would like to call the whole team for the picture and for the video, etc. You could have a shorter name, right? Rosie Yakonkushkarova from Tashkent State University of Law.
Woo!
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yes. Thank you.
Congrats.
I don't know about you, but I have this cold in my belly. And it's a very important moment now because I'm going to announce the best client, which is a category that we take in consideration the general rounds, okay? So let's see. I'll start with the third place, right? So I will kindly ask you for a big round of applause to, I like the sound effects. You can do better, right? Ooh. Alan Gittelman from Cardozo Law School. Congrats. Now let's head to the second place. Now only the right side. No, I'm just kidding. A big round of applause to Carla Melaco, Yale Law School. I like this, the way the crowd are, excited and so on. And I just want to remind you that we have the cocktail party afterwards, so let's keep this energy, right? And we have a piano, so every year we have somebody that goes there and play the piano, so I'm curious to, yeah. Anyway, the first place, best client, will go to 1, 2, 3, Amar Sheehan, Tyndall Global Law School.
Congratulations, you're going to run out of hands now.
Okay, so I don't have the same stage abilities as Franco, so I'm sorry if it's not that excited, but we are going to talk about the best counsels now, okay? For third place of best counsel is Thank you, guys. Nikhil Naveen Raju from Jindal Global Law School. For second place, we have Rachel Saddle from Cardozo Law School. And for first place, the winner of Best Counsel of 2025 CPR International Mediation Competition goes to Azrazi Makin from West Bengal National University of Juridical Sciences.
So now we are going to announce the awards for the best teamwork. So the third place, we have Universidade Presbiteriana Mackenzie. Yeah. The whole team can come here. Yeah, it's the Teamwork Award, so the whole team came to the front.
Thank you very much. Yeah, they're six and we're the coaches. Got it. Take a photo with just the team without Diego on me. Just your team.
Just the team. Go. Now, we're going to have the second place for the best teamwork. We have Fordham Law School. Congratulations.
Congratulations. Oh my gosh, thank you so much. Congratulations. Who's going to take the seat in the game? Congratulations. Thank you so much. Congratulations. Let's do a photo together and then one.
And now for the first place of best teamwork, I would ask a round of applause to Yale Law School.
So right now I'm going to announce the best written statements, and I need to say that you were amazing. You did an amazing job. Because we have 3 third places, okay? So I'm going to announce. So the first third place is National Law School of India University, Bangalore. Okay, the second, third place goes to University of São Paulo, USP.
Congratulations.
No, wait, we have one more. Okay. Okay. So the third place goes to PUC Rio. Sorry. Sorry about that.
Congratulations. Excellent work. Congratulations. Congratulations. Fantastic job, everybody. Wow, great work. Congrats. Joint photo.
And we have another tie for second place. So we have 2 best second places, okay? Yeah, 3 third places, 2 second places. You did really well. So the first second place goes to Universidade Federal do Rio Grande do Sul. So the second place is Universidade Presbiteriana Mackenzie.
Congratulations again. Yeah.
Congratulations. Parabéns. Oh, it's a big room. We have only one first place. And the best written statement goes to PUC Paraná. That's why I did the joke. We got the first place.
Okay, so now we go to the announcement of the best negotiating team. The third place goes to Yale Law School. So now is the moment we've all been waiting for. We're going to announce the champion in the Best Negotiators category. And the champion is Cardozo Law School. So now a big round of applause for the second place Jindal Global Law School.
Okay, so we have reached the conclusion of our 6 categories, all the prizes and teams. Again, I really want to give a really big thanks to all the teams for all their hard work. I heard many of the judges saying that they could see how prepared you were, and I saw it too. It was a tremendous amount of work that you put in before you came, while you were here, in the 1 hour before the round started with your confidential packet, running to find a quiet place. I just really want to congratulate all of you for a fantastic job that you did. So can I just encourage us to do a round of applause for all the teams here, please? Great job. And thanks again to our judges, our room supervisors, and the committee. And now I'm pleased to hand it off to Diego. I think you're going to like what he has to say.
Well, just very quick words. I hope you all had fun. I hope you all learned something. I hope you all made friends. I hope you become ambassadors of mediators, wherever you are. And I hope you join our community and keep in touch. And now, let the party begin. We invite you to the cocktail.
DJ, play us a song, please.
A picture of the organizing committee.
Yes, Diego, can we do a photo of the organizing?
I will go after